bad news travels fast, doesn't it? So, it'd be nice to highlight more of the good stuff. And it does. And I think, there are certain situations which arise, like, recent riots, and there's a lot going on in the States at the moment. And yeah, I just think if everyone just takes a breath and, and if they're not, if you're not sure, just be kind. You never know what's going through someone else's head.
Hi, and welcome to 5 Random Questions, the show where every question is an adventure. I'm your host, Danny Brown, and each week I'll be asking my guest 5 questions created by a random question generator. The guest has no idea what the questions are, and neither do I, which means this could go either way. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this week's episode. Today's guest is Gareth Davies. Gareth has written soundtracks for commissioned animated series for TV and music for use in ads and programming around the world. Through his company, The Sound Boutique, he has also helped a wide variety of clients with their problem audio and created and produced original podcasts. Podcasts currently in ongoing production are The Music Room and Podcasting People. So, Gareth, welcome to 5 Random Questions.
Hello, Danny, you lovely man. This is exciting and terrifying in equal measure.
And I see you're buttering me up already to try go easy on you with the questions. so Gareth, we've been in each other's pod. You've got a few podcasts running, obviously. I've got a few podcasts running. I think we're both compared each other to serial podcasters. And when you were on my other podcast that I'd sort of archived, it was just an experiment that, fun experiment. But when you were on that, one of the TV shows that you had produced music for, Toad and Friends, hadn't been released yet. And obviously, you're in the UK. It's a very well-known story in the UK, Wind in the Willows, Toad of Toad Hall, etc. But that's now released on Warner Brothers Discovery, if I'm correct. Yeah. So how's that been? Are you now rich and famous? Are you driving about in the nice, Lamborghini?
Oh, yeah. Just come down to the boat anytime. No, not at all.
Parked up on the Thames.
It literally has been released in the UK last month. So that's exciting. It's actually been airing around Europe and a bit further afield that way previously. I think it's going to the US and Canada in the spring of next year. So it's kind of this very kind of slow rollout. So in terms of royalties, we have something called the PRS in this country, in the UK, where every quarter you get paid out some money for every time your music is broadcast on TV. So and that takes about a quarter. When it goes overseas, you can add quarters to it. So in some countries, it might be 2 years before I see anything. So, really, I just move on to the next thing. And then at some point, there'll be a trickle of pennies, shekels coming in.
And how does royalties work on that? Is that consistent while the show's on TV, etc.? Is there a set time limit? Is it different depending on productions, artists, etc.?
Yeah, it really depends on not only what territory you're in, but also what channel you're on. So, for instance, in the UK, primetime BBC can pay a load more than maybe, one of the Dave channels or, in the middle of the night. And there's been a lot of lobbying about, the kids at the time that kids come home from school, about that being prime time, because it's prime time starts a little bit later. But in fact, there's a huge audience there. And so, I don't know, it feels a little bit like we're not being paid, in a fair way in that sense. But, that's always ongoing. And the TV and film industry is ever evolving. And with streaming now, we have to be careful that rights aren't being negotiated away. But in terms of royalties, it really depends on what channel you're on, which territory you're in. I think I had a whole series in Brazil, and I think they take a sample. And if your program isn't on that sample day, then you don't get paid. So it can be as random as that. I'm talking about 5 random questions. It can be as random as that to be paid sometimes. So it really varies.
Well, and you moved nicely into that. Speaking of random, unfortunately, I can't pay you for your appearance today. But
That's okay.
if I ever make loads and loads of money, I will be sure to slot you into the prime time ongoing revenue slot,
Beer or cake, that's fine. It's fine by
or
me.
both,
Or both.
beer and cake. Don't sell yourself short, mate.
Cake goes well with tea, surely. I'm not sure beer and cake. No, I don't know.
Well, that's a new diet fad we can put into place. So, Gareth, are you ready? I know we were speaking in the green room before starting recording, and you mentioned you may be a little bit nervous about this bit. How are we feeling for the 5 random questions ahead?
I'm sure all of your guests have said this, but I have no idea. And as I said, as equally excited and terrified, it'll go how it goes, I guess. So, fire away.
I like that. All right, so let's bring up then the random question generator. Okay, this is a nice one, a nice easy one I feel to kick things off, Gareth. Question number 1. Would you rather keep your current sleep schedule or hibernate for 3 months and have 9 months of 24/7 alertness without being tired?
I love this. This is so random. I mean, talk about random. Wow. I think sleep is really important. I'm one of those people who has to get sleep, otherwise I'm cranky and I don't concentrate properly. So I feel like sleep is something that's in my routine. It's kind of ingrained. It's a non-negotiable for me. Sometimes I go out and have a late night and kind of get through the next day. But so I think I would probably like to keep my current sleep schedule because it's kind of comforting and it's well within my routine. But how about you? What would you do?
Well, I think the funny thing is as well, there is you said schedule and I said schedule, and we're both from the same country, obviously originally. I'm in Canada now, but UK originally. And that reminds me of a part on Would I Lie to You? It was 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown. While the good Sean Locke was still alive, and he was and John, what's John's surname? John Richardson. Yeah, so John Richardson answered a question that Jimmy Carr had asked, and he says, "Oh, well, you've got to have a schedule." And then Sean said, "Well, what is it? Is it schedule or schedule?" Because Jimmy Carr had said schedule, and John said schedule, and both British people. It just reminded me there. It took me out a little bit. Then schedule, both same, not wrong. Yeah, I feel I'd want to keep current, because looking at the question there, it says you can have your current sleep schedule or hibernate for 3 months. So obviously you sleep for a complete 3 months. Sorry, I guess about almost half of what a bear sleeps during the winter, or maybe just under half of what a bear sleeps during the winter. But then that part at the end where it says 9 months of 24/7 alertness, that basically means you're awake essentially for 9 months.
Yeah, I mean, how would you demarcate your day if you're just not tired at all? I mean, I have had jobs, and I'm sure you've had this. I'm sure most working people have this. Of occasionally, deadlines get a bit crunchy, and you have to pull a few, late nighters. And in those circumstances, maybe if I had, a weekend every month where I could stay alert for the whole weekend and then make up the time some other way, that would be quite nice. But yeah, actually, 9 months of 24/7 alertness, I think could be a little bit disturbing.
It's almost like that 30 days of night. Where in Alaska they've got, it's just all night, and then there's another place where they've got all daylight as well for like 3 months of the year or something, where it's just there's no darkness at all because of where they are in the world, and the skies are always.
There's a podcast. It's called Cold Tapes. And it's set. I can't remember if it's in the Antarctic or the Arctic, but it's basically a murder mystery. But because they're wintering over in this podcast, wintering over meaning there comes a point where you can't leave because the weather is so bad. The police can't actually go to the location to investigate, so they have to do it all over the phone and over Zoom and things. So that's where the podcast audio becomes a really good medium to tell that story. So Yeah, absolutely. They winter over, so it becomes very dark, and weather becomes too cold and to leave and things like that.
That
Amazing.
sounds interesting. As you say, podcast, because it's an audio medium, it's a perfect take that you could really get enveloped in. I'll definitely check that out and leave a note for our listeners in the show notes. I think with this one as well, I mean, if you're married or you've got kids, and do they all go to sleep at the same time? Does everybody just hibernate, or now are you leaving your family to, fend for themselves for 3 months while you're out of action? And then when you wake up, does someone else take a 3 month stint and now it's your turn? Or
Well, I can see I'm not a parent myself, but I can appreciate that having 9 months of 24/7 alertness when the kids are in bed, that would be quite nice because you have the time to do what you want then, maybe.
yeah, now you're talking Mission Impossible. Alertness after the kids have gone to bed. As a parent of 2, I can tell you, no, that is not happening. So I think we agree we're going to keep our current sleep schedule, or schedule,
Or schedule.
or schedule, which would be fair. Speaking of schedules, let's move on to question number 2. I think we kind of answered this in the intro, but let's go for it anyway, Gareth. Question number 2. What are you most likely to become famous for?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I'm not someone who particularly seeks fame. Fame's a very strange thing, isn't it, really? And it's partly why I became a composer as opposed to a performing musician. I've never really been a fan of the limelight particularly, but I love sitting in a dark room and creating music to support a story, writing to picture, and doing it that way. Yeah, and podcasting as well. My mantra is it's not about me. That's why it's a little bit weird being a guest because it is about you. But yeah, it definitely, I find everything I do is more about other people or other people's stories. And so, yeah, I don't really crave fame. But if I had to, nail it down to what would you have to become famous for, I'd like to think it was being kind or, just basic human decency, because we see a lot of the opposite in the world at the moment. And I think, recent times has shown me that people are, really intrinsically good. You do have some people who, I don't know, may have lost their way a little bit. There may be reasons for why they behave a certain way, but yeah, I think if I had to become famous, it would be for those reasons rather than, look at my new shoes or influencing something,
I always like watching these videos or reels or whatever on, say, Facebook or Instagram, etc., where it shows you, to your point, like kindness of others without expectation of kindness back. And sometimes it might show famous sports people stepping in because all that's happening is like a kid might just want a selfie or an autograph, and the security, like an example, is a security guard came over and picked this like 10-year-old kid up and frog marched him away from his sporting idol, his football idol. And the football player stopped mid-interview and went after the guard and got the kid down, got the selfie and all that, which is no need to do that. It's like that's just a good human being that's been raised the right way, doing the right thing. And yeah, I feel certainly since 2019, 2020, obviously the world changed completely for the obvious reason of the pandemic. And I feel that's brought a lot of people not out of the gutter, maybe that's too strong a phrase, but it's shown a lot of people in their true light. Because for whatever reason, it's led to people being pitted against each other, and a lot of bad stuff is coming out because of that. And it's like you say, I feel we need to highlight more of the good stuff that's happening to show there is a lot of bad stuff, but that still remains a very small minority that are just very, very vocal.
Absolutely, yeah. Bad news travels fast, doesn't it? So, it'd be nice to highlight more of the good stuff, and it does. And I think there are certain situations which arise, like, recent riots, and there's a lot going on in the States at the moment. And yeah, I just think if everyone just takes a breath and, and if they're not, if you're not sure, just be kind. You never know what's going through someone else's head. And I on social media as well, I take the view of don't say anything negative, because it's a tinderbox, isn't it? There's always going to be someone who's going to come back at you. So just, stay to your lane, which is it's a shame in a way that you can't have that kind of frank dialogue without that comeback. But that's the way of the world, I suppose.
Well, I know a lot of my friends have started to lock down their Twitter replies and only allow replies from people that follow them or they're connected with, because often, to your point, you'll just get, hate bombed by, if you're speaking politically, for example, you get hate bombed by the supporters of the other political rival, or if you're speaking about various conflicts that are happening globally, always dangerous areas to walk into when you're trying to, offer support for one side or maybe support both sides and trying to find a middle ground. It's not easy. And like you say, maybe sometimes do what you need to do as a supporter behind the scenes and just maybe stay quiet about it in front of everybody else.
Yeah. It is a shame, isn't it? Because, especially you mentioned politics there, especially in politics, you have these conversations to make up your mind about things quite a lot of the time. So to sort of vocalize questions and opinions to kind of kick the tires of political opinion to then get shot down, it's just a shame, really, isn't it? That it goes from, it's either black or white. There's never a kind of grey area of discussion. But there we go.
And I think we can all agree that if we all became famous for being kind, the world would be a much better place.
I feel like we should have the Muppet Show theme in here or something.
Well, I can't give you the Muppet Show theme because licensing and all that. You know yourself, you're a composer.
I thought you were going to say you're a Muppet.
Well, I am that too. I've been called that many, many times and continue to do so. But I can be kind and ease you on to question number 3.
Okay.
So question number 3. What is the most difficult challenge thus far in your life?
Okay, yeah. A really easy question to answer. As you know, Danny, I've had a bit of a tragedy, family tragedy recently. My mum passed away in July. Not only that, we lost Dad beginning of 22. In fact, my dad and my uncle in the space of a few weeks in 22. Then Mum was diagnosed with cancer in beginning of 23. And we just lost her in July. So there's the brain catch up of what's just happened. There's also the milestone of not having either of my parents in the world, which is really strange. I feel like, I think, I need to tell Mum that on the phone, or I need to take a picture of that and send it to her. And so there's an element of disbelief at the moment going on through my head. But, because neither of them are here, then we have the estate to handle. We've got the probate challenge, all of that stuff, which is just a constant. We have to go through the house, which is very strange, walking through their house without them there, with all of their things to remind us of them. And so yeah, easily the most difficult challenge thus far in life.
I can. We were speaking about this in the green room, obviously earlier. I can only imagine what that's like. And you said there, one of the weirdest things, or the challenging things, or the strangest things, is going through your parents' house and seeing mementos of the life that they created and built, etc. Has there been some nice, surprising things that showed you something about your mum or your dad that you may not have known because you've come across it during that process?
Yeah, well, I mean, there were lots of photos that we hadn't previously seen. Yeah, going through their paperwork and stuff, just mementos that they'd kept from, they'd lived a life, they had lots of friends around them, and seeing all that, seeing a kind of life in pictures and various certificates from, whatever qualifications they had, and all of those kinds of things were quite amazing. And actually, from when Mum was ill, the last couple of months of her life, her community coming around, and just not wanting to bother us too much, but just bringing cake or just coming for a chat and a cup of tea and seeing how we are, and just witnessing that caring community firsthand was quite amazing. And I saw, these are people I've known majority of my life, but I've seen them in a different light of late. Yeah, it's been lovely.
I think often as kids we forget our parents had a life before us. It's our kids, but before kids were born, my wife and I were very big concert goers. We love live music, and we'd go to 3, 4, 5 different bands every weekend. We'd support local indie bands, and if some bigger ones came to Toronto where we lived at the time, we'd go see them. And our kids look at, especially me now, because I'm a little bit older than my wife. So they look at me and think, you never went to concerts. Look at you, old man. But I watched an interview with Daley Thompson, the heptathlete.
Yeah.
Or decathlete, sorry, not heptathlete, decathlete, very famous British decathlete, Olympic gold winner. And just recently he was getting interviewed, and he was saying that his kids can't believe that he was this athlete that was so successful. And it's only really if he shows them his medals that they start to believe, oh, wow, Dad actually did do something. And I think sometimes we actually forget our parents had very active and very different lives from what we might have expected prior to us, being part of that life.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, my parents were very active in their community. And yes, to your question, there were things that the friends came out with where I realised, I didn't actually know he did that. But they were very there for their community and their friends, and they would do anything for anyone, really. And yeah, that's something to take away, really. It goes into the being famous for being decent, doesn't it?
Well, exactly. And I think that shows in that outlook on life. It shows, the impact that both parents had on you. And that's all you can ask for. If you can be a good person, that's a perfect legacy for any parent. It feels like the children, doesn't matter if they're great at their job, successful, rich, whatever, if they can be a good human being, I think that's like the biggest legacy any parent can ask for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey there, Danny here. This podcast will forever be free to listen to. But if you enjoy 5 Random Questions and get value from the show and want to support it, you can either do that with a donation of your choosing or as a monthly supporter with a 5 Random Questions membership. Choose your preference over at 5randomquestions.com/support. And now, back to this week's episode. Well, speaking of legacies, we're going to legicize this episode and move on to I'm getting really good at these these transitions. I've been working on them a bit. We're going to legicize this episode and move on to question number 4. Okay. I'm always curious about how, I'm a British person myself, but I'm always curious how British people answer this question. So Gareth, question number 4. If you could close one fast food chain due to disgusting food, what would you pick?
My wife's going to hate me for this.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. It's not that I don't like the food. It's that the food just doesn't agree with me when it's delivered. And that's KFC. And I love it. I absolutely love it. But yeah, can't do it. My wife absolutely loves KFC. Not every day, just as a treat. If you gave her, some chicken and a big bucket of gravy, she'd be just your friend forever. But yeah, I quite like fast food as a little treat sometimes. The odd McDonald's, it's always very disappointing, isn't it? But it's quite nice just to go, sod it, I'm gonna have that today. But yeah, I think it might have to be KFC. I'm trying to think of the other fast foods. There's KFC, there's McDonald's, there's Burger King. Actually, is quite nice. What other ones are there?
Have you got? I'm assuming the UK's got Taco Bell now, right?
Yeah, and see, I quite like tacos.
You weirdo. I like tacos. Don't get me wrong, but do you like Taco Bell?
I don't know if I've tried it actually, so maybe not. If the great Danny Brown says don't eat Taco Bell, then that's fine. Would you rate Chinese food as fast food?
It's fast. I
don't think it would.
I don't think so, because normally you take, I don't know, most Chinese restaurants that we've gone to here, for takeout anyway, they've always taken about 20, 25 minutes to get your order ready. So they're cooking it obviously as ordered. So I always feel fast food, it's either got it pre-cooked, ready to go out the door, kind of like a McDonald's. It's got, the row of burgers or breakfast, sausages, etc. As opposed to where you go and you order it and it's cooked fresh from that order.
Yeah.
But my wife would probably get on really well with yours because she loves KFC. She'll get like the, so if we're doing like a quick, easy dinner, because generally I'll be doing the cooking, but it's, because my kids both are very involved in sports, and their calendars all over the place. So a lot of the time they're doing the sports in the evenings after school. So evening meals are generally reserved for the weekends. So because of that, sometimes Jacqueline will get, go to KFC, get a bucket of chicken, fries, gravy, or chips. I keep forgetting, I've got to make it back to the chips and the fries difference, gravy, etc. So I feel they'd get on really well together.
So if we reframe that question and said, what one fast food chain would you save? What would that answer be, I wonder?
I'd probably save, I'm going to go for A&W Burgers. I think that's maybe a Canadian chain, mate.
Yeah.
But they're competitors to McDonald's. But if you look at McDonald's menu, you mentioned it or you referred to it earlier, you look at the McDonald's menu and you see what looks like a really juicy quarter pounder. And then you get this little flaccid thing wrapped up in a soggy piece of paper. And you think, what is this? I once took a picture and posted it because I could hold my thumb and forefinger together fairly closely. And that was my burger from McDonald's. It was disgusting. But A&W Burgers, the burgers are amazing. Their fries, their chips are excellent. Their chicken tenders, all the stuff that they make is really, really good. So if that was classed as a fast food chain and that was under threat, that'd be the one I'd want to save. How about you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I agree about McDonald's burgers. They are pretty disgusting, but they also do the strawberry shake, which feels like a real treat. It's that's like going out for ice cream, isn't it? Yeah, it's a tricky one.
I'm going to make a executive decision here. I'm going to close down McDonald's, but save the drinks and move them to another chain.
Oh, yeah.
Is that acceptable?
That's very acceptable.
All right. I think we've saved the world here. I think we've made an important decision globally, for global peace and health and everything. Like, let's get rid of McDonald's, save the drinks. All right. Well, on the premise of saving the world, it's time to save your answer for the last question. And actually, it's not time to save your answer because you're going to share it. So let's move on to question number 5. Okay, Gareth. I feel I know the answer to this. Again, we kind of alluded to it in the intro when we were chatting a little bit. But question number 5. Do you serve money or does money serve you?
I'm trying to work out what that means. So do you serve money as in...
I think, yeah. I think that's mainly around, do you serve money? Are you like a slave to money where everything you do is just to earn the money to make whatever happen? Or is that just like a side benefit to what you're doing anyway?
So it's to staying alive. Yeah, that's basically it.
So it's not by eating McDonald's food, that's for sure, because that's gone.
Yeah, very much the opposite. Yeah, I don't, I wouldn't be a freelance composer and an indie podcaster if I was a slave to money. Yeah, as every other indie podcaster will tell you. So yes, very much the opposite. I think if you can get by, there's a lot more to life than just the pursuit of money, I'd say. I've had peaks and troughs in my music career, but I wouldn't change a second of it because it's been you're living the dream, aren't you? Some people's dream might include a speedboat and 1 million followers and a big sponsorship deal. But no, give me a guitar and some good food and good company. That's all you need, really, isn't it?
Well, I think it goes to that phrase where money doesn't buy you happiness. And often people say, well, it's only rich people that say money doesn't buy you happiness. Because I'm sure, I'm not well off whatsoever. If someone gave me £10 million, I'd be supremely happy. But then I guess it does also bring its own problems where because you don't have to work, I mean, you can still obviously work, but because you don't have to work for a living to keep a roof over your head or pay bills, etc., then what are you doing with your time? And if you don't have something to do with that, often that's blamed for how people fall into bad habits. And, that can cause different kinds of issues now that you have money that you wouldn't have had before, for example. And I feel maybe that's where it comes down to, like you say, at some point you have enough that you need to be comfortable. Do you really need anything after that?
And also, to your point, inherently, if you're given money, you're not pursuing it, are you? So you can still be given £10 million and be very happy, thank you very much. But your decisions in life aren't all to go after that money. You know, if there's a byproduct of something where you're given lots of money, then fantastic. But I don't think it's a good way to live your life, really.
No. And I shared a tweet yesterday, late last night actually. I just finished some editing, so I went online just to finish the evening off. And I saw this tweet that was shared from someone in the US. So I reshared it because I found it a really powerful message. And it speaks to this, where it was a lady that was speaking about like poverty and money and, you know, services, healthcare, etc. I believe she was in the US. And there was a really powerful statement that she said, because there's some governments, and I don't want to get political, this isn't a political show, but there's some governments, whether it's in the US, Canada, UK, Australia, worldwide really, that are criminalising homelessness. So they're moving away tent cities. They're actually charging you or fining you, which seems ridiculous if you're homeless. How are you going to pay a fine? But so there's a big thing going on about that. And one of the things that she mentioned was, what state of consciousness do you have to criminalise poverty? Which I thought was an incredibly powerful statement, because at some stage I feel that's where, you know, having too much gets you. You want more power, you want more money, etc. And then that leads to the lesser. I'm trying to word this properly. The lesser parts of society, whether that's money, home, etc., are really struggling because of that. And I kind of wonder. You mentioned, you know, about comfort zones and having X amount of money, but then after that, you're really comfortable. If that can then be redistributed under something like universal basic income or something, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that without getting too deep in the weeds in political or anything?
No. I mean, it works for some countries, doesn't it? To have the what's the living wage? You get governments coming and going, doing pretty much the same thing. It would be interesting to see if a government came in and went, right, we're just going to change everything. It's clearly not working. We're clearly too far in debt. Let's try this instead. You just don't, do you? You might end up with no riots. People who are a lot happier and don't feel like they need to go and push police vans over and set things on fire and, raid Greggs and things.
Well, and that goes back to the whole, like the value for value that obviously podcasting's really, pushing at the moment, where instead of, supporting monetarily, you exchange services. Maybe we just need like a whole big reset. We just go back to, trading camels and, apples for plumbing services, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, interestingly, podcasting people will understand this. I got an email earlier about a tape sync job. Which is quite nice. And it just speaks to that, doesn't it? You feel like you're kind of doing a little service for the greater good. So that's quite exciting.
Well, Gareth, on that note of offering value, we've reached the end of this week's 5 random questions for you. And I'm pretty sure we've brought value to our listeners. In full fairness, it is time for you to offer your random question to me to even things out just a little bit.
Okay, so if money or time were no object, what podcast would you make?
Oh, that's a good one. I have not been asked that before. I think, like, I'm a massive Star Wars fan, which I think, our erstwhile, connection, Mark Asquith, is a huge Star Wars fan. I think it's a prerequisite to work at Captivate, where I work, and Mark co-founded. You need to be a Star Wars fan to work there. Mark's got his own Star Wars podcast. I feel I'd like to do a proper video one, because I don't have the time or expertise, etc., to do a really nice video podcast. I've always wanted to do one, but I never had the time, expertise, or money. It takes a lot to do it really properly. But I'd love to go and speak to all the extras that were hidden. So they didn't even have their face in the movie. They were underneath a Jawa costume, or they were an Ewok, but not the well-known ones. Not Warwick Davis, for example, but just the ones that were just there on screen for a split second. And just basically ask them about their experience, what they felt. Did they feel like they were, like going back to the original Star Wars, did they feel they were part of something big, or was this like a really stupid thing that they were making at the time because you had a big walking carpet and you had, like, like weird robots?
Is there a documentary about just that? It was to do with the extras and people on set. I can't remember.
It's possible. I know Ricky Gervais had extras like the TV show, but that's a little bit different. But yeah, because of my love of Star Wars, and it might be a really short-lived thing, they might have nothing to say because they just turned up, got paid, and buggered off home. Who knows?
Well, this is where we're quite aligned in our podcast thinking, because my show that I think I would want to make is the same thing but for session musicians. So this person played on that. What was it like? You have people like Steve Lukather, who was the lead guitarist in Toto, but Toto as a band was made up of these amazing session musicians, world class, who played on loads and loads of things, and you don't realize, wow, he played on that. So to speak to people who will have played on various hits, or you think, it's a bit like I was there too, that would be very, very interesting. But yeah, Star Wars, I'm in. Let's do it.
So there you go, Amazon. You've just given $100 million to the Kelsey brothers for their new podcast exclusive.
Yeah.
You've got 2 ideas right here, and we'd probably only charge $10 million. So bonus.
Or beer and cake. It's absolutely fine.
Sorted. I'm going to be on it. I'm going to get Mark to reach out. I'm sure he's got a really good contract at Amazon. We'll get on this, mate.
Yeah, nice.
So Gareth, we've reached the end and included my question, and I have really, as always, I always enjoyed chatting to you, mate. Like I say, we've sort of been on each other's podcasts, and it's always been really enjoyable. For people that want to check out your audio compositions, your work that you do for TV and movies, and the work you do for podcast clients, or even just check out your podcasts on their own, where's the best place to listen to them and connect and reach out to you?
The website is always good. That's thesoundboutique.com. I have, like you mentioned, 2 active podcasts at the moment, The Music Room and Podcasting People. They're musicroom.community and podcastingpeople.community. And I'm all over social media as Gareth Sounds.
All right, social media tart. You need to get a T-shirt. I'm going to get a T-shirt printed and send it over to you. I'm a social media tart. But then you have to say it in that voice as well, though, when you're speaking to people.
Yeah. Might have to get that T-shirt made.
I will look to see what I can do. So again, Gareth, I really appreciate your time today, mate.
It's been so much fun. Thanks for inviting me, Danny.
Thanks for listening to 5 Random Questions. If you enjoyed this week's episode, be sure to follow for free on the app you're currently listening on, or online at 5randomquestions.com. And if you feel like leaving a review, well, that would make me happier than that time I found out there was a potential arrest warrant out for me for a salacious act in public. But it turned out to be a very different Danny Brown in the US, so I didn't need to explain anything to a very curious and questionable wife. But seriously, if you want to leave a review, you can do that at 5randomquestions.com/review. It would make my day. Until the next time, keep asking those questions.